Yves Saint Laurent, Story of Sensitivity, Fashion and Passion. Yves Saint Laurent wasn't just a fashion visionary. He was a fragile, complex soul who revolutionized the world with his unique sensitivity and vision. A creator constantly exploring new worlds, always driven by the desire to leave an unforgettable mark. Yves Saint Laurent was a genius who never gave up, even when his own vulnerability threatened to overwhelm him. Behind every creation was a man wrestling with his delicate heart, like a flower caught between strength and fragility. Every garment he designed wasn't just fabric, it was a mirror of his soul, a deep desire to explore new horizons, to liberate women, and to leave an indelible mark on fashion history. Yves Saint Laurent was the very embodiment of revolution in fashion. With sensitivity and determination, he challenged conventions, turning the female wardrobe into a manifesto of individuality and power. His life was an extraordinary journey between art and design, marked by both challenges and triumphs. Get ready to dive into the story of a man who gave women a voice through his clothes, gifting the world a new vision of elegance, one infused with courage and innovation. His legacy still lives on today, inspiring generations of designers and fashion lovers alike, making fashion a symbol of freedom and self-expression. Before diving into the extraordinary story of Yves Saint Laurent, I invite you to subscribe to this YouTube channel, Quotes of Style. Here, you'll find the most fascinating and inspiring stories from the world of fashion, along with quotes that have defined eras and icons. Click the subscribe button and activate the notification bell so you won't miss any of the exclusive videos coming your way. Thank you. Now, let's step into Yves Saint Laurent's world and discover how his fragile strength, his poetic imagination, and his fearless devotion to beauty reshaped fashion, liberating women through design and turning emotion into timeless elegance. Yves-Henri Donat. Mathieu Saint Laurent was born on August 1, 1936, in Oran, French Algeria, in a home bathed in the light and colors of the Mediterranean. His father, Charles, was a lawyer and insurance executive, while his mother, Lucienne, an elegant and refined woman, played a key role in his future. From a young age, Yves showed a sensitive and introverted spirit, always searching for a safe refuge. By the age of 7, he was already designing clothes for his sister's dolls, losing himself in a world filled with beauty and delicacy. Imagine a young boy alone in his room, a pencil in hand, dreaming dreams too big to be contained. Within the soft lines of his sketches, Yves Saint Laurent found his true freedom, but the world outside was harsh. Bullied for his sensitivity, Yves discovered his strength through creativity. His fragility didn't break him, it became the very source of his genius. In this story, the figure of his mother, Lucienne, was essential. With her impeccable style and grace, she encouraged Yves Saint Laurent to follow his passion for fashion, recognizing his extraordinary talent from the very beginning. Thanks to her, Yves found the courage to face the challenges ahead, drawing strength from that deep bond that made every step of his journey even more meaningful. At just 17 years old, Yves Saint Laurent decided to enter the prestigious fashion competition held by the International Wool Secretariat, submitting a few of his sketches. It was there that he met a young Karl Lagerfeld, a future lifelong rival. Both of them, with extraordinary talent and unshakable determination, impressed the judges and won the competition. But it was Yves Saint Laurent who caught the eye of Christian Dior, who was struck by his exceptional creative vision. That moment opened the door to an extraordinary career. That victory marked not only the beginning of a legendary rivalry, but also the start of a journey that would forever transform the world of fashion. Moving to Paris marked a turning point in Yves Saint Laurent's life. Immersed in the vibrant heart of the fashion world, he found the perfect environment to nurture his talent. The French capital, with its blend of elegance and innovation, offered him endless opportunities to grow. It was here that he refined his skills and began laying the foundation for what would become one of the most extraordinary careers in fashion history. But it was his encounter with Christian Dior that truly changed the course of his life. Dior, who immediately recognized Yves Saint Laurent's extraordinary talent, took him under his wing. To Yves, Dior was more than just a mentor. He was a guide, a father figure in a world that often felt far too big for him. When Christian Dior died suddenly, Yves Saint Laurent, at just 21 years old, was thrust into the spotlight as head of the Maison. The world watched him, caught between doubt and expectation, but Yves did not disappoint. In that moment, he proved that fragility could exist alongside genius, and that beauty was never just external, but a reflection of a delicate soul. 1958 was the year of his triumph. With his trapeze line, Yves Saint Laurent redefined the very concept of femininity. This design, marked by a simple, flared silhouette, revolutionized the female form, freeing women from the corsets and rigid structured dresses of the 1950s. It was a revolution. As the Paris runways erupted in applause and his trapeze line stole the spotlight, backstage, Yves quietly wondered if it was all real, if he, with his fragile heart, was truly worthy of such glory. He was a man who carried a delicate soul, yet had the power to reshape the world through the strength of his vision. Every success felt like validation, but for Yves Saint Laurent, the true battle was always within, finding a way to balance his vulnerability with his unstoppable need to create. It was during this time that fate led Yves Saint Laurent to meet Pierre Bergé, a young intellectual who shared his vision. Their connection was instant, fueled by a mutual passion for art and fashion. Bergé became not only his lover, but also his business partner, supporting Yves through his rise to greatness. Together, they formed an unbreakable bond, one built on a deep understanding of each other's artistic and personal dreams. Despite his professional success, Yves Saint Laurent remained deeply vulnerable. The relentless pressure of the fashion industry and mounting expectations weighed heavily on him. The burden of upholding Dior's prestigious name, along with the demands of the public and critics, became overwhelming, placing immense stress on the young designer and profoundly impacting his mental health. To make Yves Saint Laurent's already fragile state even more complicated, in 1960 he was called up for military service during the Algerian War. Thrust into a world light years away from the fashion runways, Yves faced a brutal and relentless reality. His sensitivity, the very source of his creativity, clashed harshly with the harshness of military life. That experience, so far removed from his universe of beauty and delicacy, struck him deeply, shaking his foundation and pushing him further toward a fragile and unstable balance. The consequences of this tragic period soon followed. Yves Saint Laurent was admitted to a psychiatric hospital, where harsh treatments only worsened his condition. Electroshock therapy and heavy medication further weakened him. But out of that pain, unexpectedly, a new strength emerged. Yves transformed his suffering into an endless source of creativity, as if every wound became a symbol to be translated into beauty. 1961 marked a year of rebirth for Yves Saint Laurent. Together with Pierre Bergé, who never left his side, even in the darkest moments, Yves founded his own fashion house and unveiled his first collection, sparking a new era in fashion. Among the standout creations of this period was Le Smoking, a tuxedo reimagined for women. Bold and revolutionary, this piece became the symbol of an emancipated femininity, daring to challenge social conventions. Le Smoking wasn't just a suit, it was a manifesto of liberation, a perfect symbol of the evolving role of women in the 60s, aligned with the wave of female empowerment. With this design, Yves Saint Laurent celebrated not only femininity, but also the power and freedom for women to choose how to present themselves to the world, breaking free from the strict rules of traditional fashion and wearing a garment that combined elegance, authority, and independence. This revolutionary spirit of Yves Saint Laurent was also reflected in one of his greatest passions, art. Art always played a central role in both his life and his creations. The designer often drew inspiration from painters like Mondrian, Picasso, and Matisse, weaving bold colors and geometric shapes into his garments. His collections became true tributes to artistic beauty. A striking example of Yves Saint Laurent's passion for art was his iconic Mondrian collection from 1965. Inspired by the work of Dutch painter Pierre Mondrian, this series of dresses revolutionized fashion with blocks of vibrant colors, red, blue, and yellow, combined with black and white, arranged in strict geometric forms that echoed the artist's paintings. It brought neoplasticism into the world of prêt-à-porter. The collection not only celebrated the aesthetics of neoplasticism, but also stood as a tribute to Yves Saint Laurent's creative genius. Each dress was a masterpiece of simplicity, proving that fashion could be a true form of art. The Mondrian collection didn't just make waves on the runway, it marked a historic moment, bringing high art into the wardrobe of the modern woman. Yves Saint Laurent had a deep love for travel and the discovery of new cultures, shapes, and colors. It was in 1966, during a trip to Morocco with Pierre Berger, that they stumbled upon the garden in Marrakech. Captivated by its beauty, they decided to purchase it in 1980 and began a meticulous restoration of both the garden and the villa, which they renamed Villa Oasis. There, surrounded by serenity and natural beauty, Yves Saint Laurent found a refuge, a place where his creativity could flourish and his spirit could finally find peace. This garden was not only a refuge for Yves Saint Laurent, but also a constant source of inspiration for his artistic soul. It was during his time in the Moroccan desert that the idea for the safari jacket was born. In 1966, Yves Saint Laurent introduced this iconic piece, a casual jacket that blended functionality with elegance, inspired by the colors and forms of distant lands. The safari jacket quickly became a symbol of freedom and adventure. It wasn't just a garment, it was the expression of an inner journey, a deep desire to explore and embrace the world, reflecting the perfect union between Yves Saint Laurent's creativity and the captivating spirit of Morocco. That same year, Yves Saint Laurent revolutionized the fashion world with the launch of Rive Gauche prêt-à-porter, making high fashion accessible to a wider audience. This groundbreaking move democratized luxury, allowing women to express their individuality through designer pieces at more affordable prices, forever changing the way we dress. With the success of prêt-à-porter, Yves Saint Laurent began to redefine the boundaries of fashion, challenging conventions with creations that not only celebrated femininity, but empowered women to express their personality with confidence. Season after season, his runway shows became unmissable events, packed with critics and celebrities eager to witness his extraordinary designs. In his hands, fashion was never just clothing, it was a powerful form of expression. His creations made those who wore them feel like they were part of a work of art. Yves Saint Laurent's passion for color was evident in every one of his collections. He didn't see color as a mere decorative element, but as a powerful expressive tool, capable of telling stories. In his studio, he had created an entire room dedicated to color, a personal laboratory where he would spend hours blending pigments and crafting new shades. This space was the beating heart of his creativity, a place where color became an extension of his soul. The bold and unexpected color combinations, born from his deep artistic sensitivity, would go on to define many of his collections, becoming a signature of his unmistakable style. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Yves continued to explore new horizons. Each collection became a journey through styles and cultures where his artistic soul came to life. With his love for cinema and literature, Yves Saint Laurent infused his designs with a magical, dreamlike atmosphere. His meticulous attention to detail, his search for the finest fabrics, and his dedication to craftsmanship turned his garments into true works of art. Every runway show was a celebration of creativity, a burst of color and form that captured the imagination of anyone lucky enough to witness it. But despite the success, Yves Saint Laurent continued to feel trapped between expectations and the relentless pressure of the fashion world, an inner struggle that never stopped haunting him. In 1983, Yves Saint Laurent reached one of the greatest milestones of his career. He became the first fashion designer to receive the Costume Institute Award from New York's Metropolitan Museum. This achievement didn't just honor his creations. It recognized his ability to elevate fashion to the level of art, leaving a lasting impact on future generations of designers. However, by the late 80s and into the 90s, Yves Saint Laurent's life was increasingly overshadowed by struggles with both mental and physical health, worsened by substance abuse and alcohol. Despite these hardships, he never stopped creating. Even though his later collections didn't quite match the success of his earlier work, his brilliance remained undeniable. His career came to a close with a final farewell to the runway in 2002, an event that was as heartbreaking as it was magnificent. Yves Saint Laurent's final fashion show, held on January 22, 2002, at the Centre Pompidou in Paris, was a historic event. The runway celebrated the most iconic moments of his career, featuring designs that had defined entire generations. The audience, deeply moved, knew they were witnessing the end of a legendary chapter in fashion history. The emotion in the room was palpable, a tribute not only to Yves Saint Laurent's creative genius, but to his unique ability to turn every garment into a timeless statement. Around the same time, the closure of the Maison Yves Saint Laurent in 2002 marked the end of an era, but his spirit continued to shine. Even away from the runway, Yves remained an enduring icon of inspiration, a symbol of how fashion could tell stories of beauty and individuality. Alongside Pierre Berger, his bond with art and culture deepened through new experiences, allowing him to continue living life with intensity and passion. Yves Saint Laurent passed away on June 1, 2008, in Paris, at the age of 71, after a long and difficult battle with illness. His funeral was held at the Saint-Roch Cathedral, attended by leading figures from the worlds of fashion, art, and culture, including Catherine Deneuve, Carla Bruni, and many other friends and collaborators who had shared in his extraordinary journey. After the ceremony, Yves Saint Laurent's ashes were taken to Morocco, the place he loved, where he had always found creative refuge. They were scattered in the rose garden of Villa Oasis in Marrakech, the home he and Pierre Berger had lovingly restored, a symbol of their deep bond with that land, which had meant so much to them both. After his funeral, the magic of Yves Saint Laurent continued to shine, captivating the world through extraordinary exhibitions that celebrate his genius. From Paris to New York, each showcase tells stories of creativity and innovation, inviting fashion lovers on a journey through his universe. His legacy lives on in the power he gave to women, transforming fashion into a tool for freedom and self-expression, and inspiring generations to embrace their individuality. We end this tribute to Yves Saint Laurent here, a master who redefined fashion through his unique and revolutionary sensitivity. Yves didn't just design clothes. He shaped a new way of seeing the world, blending fragility and genius into a timeless expression of beauty. His impact goes far beyond collections, leaving a deep mark on culture and art. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the heart and soul of an icon who changed the course of fashion history. Stay with Quotes of Style to keep exploring the extraordinary lives of those, like Yves Saint Laurent, who left an indelible mark on the world. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next story.